Hello and welcome to Chequered Flag Extra. As you may have heard, the Chequered Flag podcast is going weekly. So on top of our usual podcasts, previewing and reviewing the latest race, you'll also hear from us in non-race weeks, reacting to the very latest news. Plus, you'll hear exclusive content such as extended interviews with drivers and team principals, past and present. So make sure you're subscribed to BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone settings so you never miss a new episode. This week, we'll be hearing from former Haas team principal Günther Steiner, who discusses his career in Formula One, how he came into the sport at the start of the century with Jaguar, his role in setting up Haas and becoming a Netflix Drive to Survive star. Plus, he'll reveal the favourite race of his career. But first, I'm joined this week by the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. Andrew, before we hear from Günther Steiner, I want to react a bit more to the fallout from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, namely Max Verstappen, who picked up that 5-second penalty in Jeddah for the first lap incident with Oscar Piastri. He clearly wasn't very happy after the race, and he has said since we recorded our review show of that race that people can't handle the full truth. Tell us more about this. What is the truth? What can't we handle?
Well, Verstappen was not clear what exactly he was referring to in those quotes, the full extent of which you can still read on the BBC Sport website, of course. That was the lead for my sort of follow-up piece on Sunday. But it's very clear that he's talking about the FIA rules on that were introduced over the winter that prevent drivers from, or at least penalise drivers potentially for swearing and or making comments critical of the FIA. Because some of the comments that he made in the press conference on Sunday were very clearly a reference to that. Because after the remark about people can't handle the full truth, he went on to say, everyone is super sensitive about everything. Currently, we cannot be critical anyway. So less talking, even better for me. And he carried on saying, I cannot swear in here, but at the same time, you also can't be critical in any form that might, quote, harm or, quote, danger. Let me get the sheet out. There's lots of lines, you know. So he's obviously talking there about these guidelines that the drivers are under at the moment, which the drivers are very unhappy about. And one or two of them have come out publicly leading up to the season about it. They're not really talking about it regularly anymore, but I can tell you that there is disquiet generally among the drivers about this situation. Sunday night was Verstappen reflecting that in the context of the punishment he got for the move at the first corner.
So this is very much drivers against the FIA right now and how they are operating things. Is there a result to this nearby, or is this going to keep on rolling week in, week out?
Well, it doesn't look like the FIA are about to, stand down on this approach. And if anything, Mohammed Ben Sulayem seems to be doubling down on it. We don't know what was happening at the time, but there's video that has emerged of Verstappen having just got out of the car in Saudi Arabia, and Ben Sulayem starts talking to him, remonstrating with his arms, and Verstappen looks very upset in the course of that conversation. But of course, Verstappen hasn't talked about it. So we can only extrapolate in our own minds what that might have been about. But it doesn't take too many steps. Maybe we're adding 2 and 2 and making 5, Harry, but it doesn't take too many steps to believe that having had that conversation, he then goes straight to the press conference and says what he says about the penalty, that it might have been related.
Well, I mean, clearly the tensions are there and they're not subsiding. Andrew, you do a Q&A for the BBC Sport website, which is always an excellent read every week, where people can put their questions to you. It's available now, actually, on the F1 page on the BBC website. Kate sent in a question asking if Max Verstappen needs to modify his driving as a result of the penalty decision, because it's all well and good him being angry about the penalty he's been given, but according to the new driver guidelines, well, he cut the apex in the corner was not his. He cut the chicane and didn't give back the position. So that's how it works.
Yes, it was an interesting situation because it was the first time that the new guidelines that came into force for this season were tested in a situation with Verstappen. And of course, the new guidelines were written as a consequence of the drivers being unhappy about the way Verstappen drives generally. The conversation started among the drivers after Austin last year when Lando Norris was penalised, people may remember, for trying to overtake Verstappen around the outside. Verstappen ran him off the track. Norris kept going, but then got the penalty. They then had a conversation, the drivers in Mexico, where they sort of bashed all this stuff out, and the FIA went away and rewrote the guidelines. It's not for me, Harry, to say whether Verstappen should change his driving style. That's entirely a matter for him and the FIA. He's driven in this way all his career, so it would be quite a change for him to modify it. But what I would say as well is that he's very tough, Max Verstappen, but he's also very smart. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't learn from this incident in one way or another. And I think all this does, Harry, is it just adds an extra level of intrigue to what is already a very intriguing championship situation.
I mean, absolutely. It was almost Piastri giving Verstappen a bit of a taste of his own medicine, right? And I think our old Five Live colleague, Jolyon Palmer, crunched the numbers and the telemetry after the race on Sunday. And you can see from the data that even if you take out Piastri, remove him, he's not there in that corner. Verstappen was no way going to make that corner. He was always carrying too much speed and was always going to cut the chicane. There was no way he was going to make that corner. So
I'm sure Max would disagree with that, Harry, but
I trust Jolyon and his data. He does love it. But that does set us up for a nice, tasty ding-dong. Do you think this is the beginning maybe of a bit of a nice rivalry? Piastri ever growing into this personality that we're seeing on track?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about Oscar Piastri is that he's, even in his short career so far, he's already established himself as a very clinical, tough, assertive racer. Think back to his move on Lando Norris on the first lap in Monza last year, which got him the lead of the race. Now, you can argue whether McLaren should have allowed them to be in that situation, given the championship position at the time, but they did let them race, and Piastri went and pulled that really great move around the outside. And then the way he won in Baku with that very late on the brakes move into the first corner to take the lead from Charles Leclerc and then defending for the rest of the race. I think that move in Baku was the best overtaking move of the season last year. And we're only 5 races into the season. Piastri's already got, in my mind, the 2 best overtaking moves of the season. Maybe the 3 best. So he's taken the lead. I'm not even including the start line move, but the move around the outside of Hamilton into turns 22 and 23 in Jeddah was breathtaking, massively full of jeopardy. But the one around the outside, also of Hamilton in Melbourne in the wet into turns 9 and 10 was even better. That won the overtake of the month on the Formula One website in March. And I'd be very surprised if Piastri's move in Jeddah on Hamilton doesn't win it again in April.
Oh, it sets it up so nicely, doesn't it? With a week off now before we head to Miami. So it'll be really interesting to see how things unfold, how Verstappen will be with his temperament on track and off it. But Miami is the next race in a week's time. You can hear our usual Checkered Flag podcasts around that weekend from Friday, 2nd of May. Plus, we'll have live coverage of every session, including the race, of course, across the 5 Live network. Remember, it's also a sprint weekend in Miami, so it's going to come pretty thick and fast. But before that, let's hear from this week's special guest, who is actually an American. Well, American-Italian, but either way, it's good to hear from the former Haas team principal, Günther Steiner, who has been speaking with me about his career and, of course, that Drive to Survive fame.
5 Live's Checkered Flag podcast.
Günther, I feel like you're busier now than you ever have been when you were a team principal at Haas. Between it's the punditry, the book, the podcasting, and now a new 42 date tour. I'm assuming you're a man that doesn't like to not be busy.
Yeah, I don't like to sit around, but unemployment works very well for me. I'm busy, as you say, I'm busy, and what I was surprised how many different things you can do when you are actually unemployed. So it's just the variety of things I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. So it's good.
So this new tour you're about to go on, though, I assume you're no stranger to tours. You're sort of spilling the tea on behind the scenes of your life and career. But are you discussing sort of the latest goings on in the sports as well? Because there's so much happening in the world of Formula One.
Yeah, we are doing a little bit of that one as well, and it's getting, as you say, more and more interest because there's so much happening. And then what we always do is Q&A, and that's getting more popular because people want to know stuff, and we can see, people which putting questions in. So we keep 15-20 minutes at the end of the show for questions from the people which are there.
You've turned into a megastar thanks to Netflix and Drive to Survive, but they've only seen, or some fans might have only seen, your time at Haas. So I'd just like to go back to the very beginning. How did you get into motorsport? What was the opening door for you?
The opening door for me was Mazda Rally Team Europe when I was 20 years old in 1986, in this room there's not many.
You don't look a day over 25.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I'm 60 next week,
wow.
So yeah. Anyway, don't remind me of that one, but
sorry about that.
It's all good, But no, I just was always interested in racing cars, nothing else. I mean, where I come from, there is no culture of racing cars. My family was not into racing cars, but I always loved them. I mean, I don't know where. And then I started to work as a mechanic in 1986 at Mazda Rally Team Europe in Belgium.
And then your first glimpses of Formula One, that came, funnily enough, with Red Bull, right? Or you were involved with the early stages of Red Bull from Jaguar into Red Bull. Was that correct?
No, Jaguar was my first one into F1.
And then into Red Bull,
and then into Red Bull 2 years after, yeah. No, Jaguar was my first job, and I was working in rallying, and I was very happy. I lived in the UK, and I was technical director of the Ford Rally program with M Sport. And it's just like I got the phone call from Niki Lauda, and I didn't know the guy. I knew who he was, by the way,
Unknown number calling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it was his assistant said, Mr. Lauda would like to speak with you. And I spoke with him, and he employed me, but I was not looking to change career. I was happy where I was, and I never actually thought, to go to F1 or to make it there because I didn't have any connections. But, that is how I ended up here, and I'm sitting here with you.
I'm so sorry about that as well, by the way. How was that time at Jaguar and then the transition period into Red Bull?
I mean, the time at Jaguar was tough. It was very difficult. Jaguar was owned by Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company at the time, is when a big corporate comes into F1, they think they know everything. And, Niki being the complete opposite, being a racer at heart, he just knew racing. He didn't care about a big corporate life and rules and things. So it didn't last long. I mean, he was let go after a year when I was there, after I came. And then somehow I didn't want to stay there without him because my allegiance was with him, and I left as well. So I came back to Red Bull when Red Bull then bought Jaguar after 2 years. I came back 2 years after again in the same place. It's very weird, my career.
Was there a point, could we have seen Günther Steiner as team principal of a Red Bull team?
No, it was clear defined at the time. I was technical director and Christian was team principal. Christian started a month before me there.
Oh, okay. So he really is a veteran of the sport as well. He's been around a long time.
Yeah, he's getting older as well. That's what
I was trying to get.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not alone, don't worry.
Yeah, so I will remind him next time I see him, in Miami.
Exactly. So I know a lot happened in between as well. You went off to NASCAR to launch Red Bull's project there. But then, and I'm fast forwarding a bit here, the call for Formula One is clearly still there. There must have still been an itch, and then there's a chance to start a new Formula One team, an American Formula One team. How did that process begin? Did Gene Haas come to you? Did you come to him? What were the origins of Haas?
No, the origins were I moved to the States, as you said, to open up the NASCAR team for Red Bull. I stayed there after I left Red Bull, opened up my own company, and in 2009, a lot of manufacturers left Formula One. It was quite a period in Formula One. New teams came, they went. A lot of team struggles, and I was asked to help the US F1 team, which struggled not to lose their license, but they couldn't do it. It was too late in the day. And but there I had the idea. Actually, the idea is very good to establish an F1 team coming from the States. Stefano Domenicali at the time was the team principal at Ferrari, now CEO of F1, obviously. He's a good friend of mine, was a good friend since a long time, and I spoke with him. And then I had the idea, okay, let's put a business plan together to set up an F1 team and go around and try to find an investor. And I found Gene Haas, which wanted to put the money in, and there where we started.
And the rest is history. Were you a little bit worried, though, because you mentioned there was the US F1 project, but also we then got, I think it was 3 new teams in 2010, wasn't it, who all barely made it into the points, if ever, and all eventually folded up and shut up shop. Was there a point that you were worried, well, how can we be different here?
Yeah, and that you said the right thing. How can we be different? Because doing more of the same, seeing that the other ones failed, I was fully aware of that we didn't have more money than the other ones, and we were not smarter or more intelligent than the other ones. Then just doing more of the same or trying to cannot work. And that the idea was born to join with the manufacturer, which we did with Ferrari at the time, or Haas is still with Ferrari, and buy as much stuff from them as possible, so you're not exposing yourself or you're not risking as much as the other ones did, because the other ones, they all did a good job. But F1 is so difficult, and sometimes people are not aware of that one, how difficult it actually is to make it in F1. And I said, I'm for sure not smarter than the people which tried, so why would I be better or be successful? So I just had to find another way to do it, and that was doing it with somebody who is there and knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and you did it. And what a feeling that must have been to sign. I think the first year it was Kevin Magnussen and Esteban Gutierrez. And then to see them lead the garage to, was it Romain Grosjean the first year? Romain and Esteban.
It was Kevin came the second
Kevin
year.
came later. So the
I almost missed that one.
You went with me on that one.
I went with you,
well, Everyone always forgets Esteban Gutierrez, I think, though, in that first year. But I mean, that pride, that moment of seeing the cars pull out of the garage and on the grid for the very first race, describe that feeling.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. But the strange thing for me is, when you do it, you don't realize it. You realize it years after, what actually was done there. Because when you're doing it, you're living too much in the moment. You've got too many worries. What could go wrong? What have we not covered? What we still need to do? You're just too busy thinking of what you have to do, so you cannot really think about what was actually achieved. And I wouldn't say by me, by the whole team, because it's not about me here, Yeah, I had the idea and we started it. Gene Haas put the money in, but all the people which worked there, it's quite amazing when you think back what was done. And I think back now, the nights these guys worked, guys and girls, because worked to get there. It's something pretty cool.
You had some amazing highs, but also some lows as well.
Some amazing lows. I mean, don't forget about them, yeah.
Well, I want to just focus on maybe one of the low years, with the COVID years, and you sign, you get rid of your experienced drivers, and you go for Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. How do you reflect on that year with those two drivers and going for that rookie lineup?
I don't remember. That is how I reflect, not wanting to know. I think I reflect on that year as a very difficult year, 21, for Haas F1. And obviously we had 2 rookie drivers and the performance wasn't there. But the performance, they couldn't do any better. The car was just, in 2020, we didn't do any development, And you need to be fair to these guys, saying they couldn't have done any better. Which they knew about it, because I told them. I didn't, because if in Formula 1, it's difficult when you develop to keep up with the big teams. But if you stop, because we mothballed the wind tunnel, we didn't do any development. All the people which did research and development, design, they didn't do anything the whole year. So you cannot expect any more. And I was well aware what will happen. I was well aware. And I made actually, when I let Kevin and Romain go on the telephone code, I told them actually, guys, you don't want to be here next year, because this will be painful for you guys.
Was that a duty of care to them?
At the time, they thought I just want to make soften my speech, just make me feel better about it. But years later, they said, Gunther, thanks God we weren't there in 21, because they could see it from outside. For the rookies on the other side, as I don't blame them for the results, it was actually not a bad year, because they had no pressure to perform. The opposite what Liam Lawson has in the moment. They know the car was whatever it was, and they just had to make experience.
The other thing then, I suppose, is Drive to Survive is really gaining traction at this point now, especially through COVID. Are you also then feeling your own character and profile massively increase? And how are you dealing with that?
In the beginning, I didn't really feel it, under COVID, because there was no people around. It was it was in 2020 it started that people started to recognize me. I remember on the way to Australia, but then obviously after Australia, the world shut down, so there was no contact or very little contact with people. And then, in 21, it started up again. And there I could feel that people I knew me a lot more than before. But as well, it comes gradually. It's not like from one day to the next, it comes gradually. So a little bit getting used to it. Obviously, in the beginning, is something, people know your name and you don't know, do I know this person or not, and after a while you get used to it. They know you, but I don't know them. That was something new for me, so but you just go along with it because it is there. You cannot change it anyway, so go along with it.
Did you feel more famous than the drivers?
I still don't feel famous, to be honest. I mean, it's like, no, it's just one of these things. It is a weird thing to understand why all of a sudden so many people know you and shout your name.
Well, I know we've done a sort of super quick zoom through your career, and of course you'll tell everybody more on the tour throughout the year. I just want to get your thoughts, though, finally, on the current season with Haas in particular. Obviously, you've left the team and now you're doing all your punditry work. Aya Komatsu's running the show there now. They had a brilliant result in China, but off the back of a terrible weekend in Australia. They made a lot of trackside engineering changes as well. How do you view the team from the outside now?
I mean, from the team, Australia, as you said, was not a good race. China was a very good race. Also, circumstances helped there. In the end, there's still a lot of people there from day one, and I just wish them not to be where they were in Australia.
Would you have signed Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman?
I think I would have signed Ollie Behrman. That was already in 23. That was already a plan in place with Fred at the time. Okay. He did already 2 FP1s in 23. The plan was to do 6 FP1s, which he did in 24. And then if it's all good, get him in there. There was already a plan put in place. So I would say yes. And what I always say is I would have tried to keep Nico because I think Nico's a very good driver. And I think maybe if I would have been there, maybe he would have stayed.
You could have sweet talked him.
I don't know. You never know. We will never know, because we cannot make it happen. But that's what I would have tried to do.
If the opportunity ever arose again in the future for you to go back, not to Haas, but to any team, to be a team principal, was that something you'd still be open to?
I would go back if there is a project, not just to do a job. I mean, just to go back to do a team principal job. As I said, I'm 60 next week,
That's young, Gunther. It's young.
I'm young, but I don't want to do a 7 to 9 o'clock job anymore, 7 days a week, 12 months a year, If it is a project, I can do it. As you say, I'm young, I've got energy, but just to go and do a job, it's much... I'd much rather do something where I can form the future.
Well, speaking of project, how pleased are you to see the Cadillac entry gain traction and actually gain their place on the grid?
I think, as you said, the right word is gain their place on the grid. Before, it was when the first attempt was there is where we need to come here. I think they convinced FOM that it's a good thing to have a big manufacturer like Cadillac in, and obviously also commercially, because what FOM rightly so is very protective is of the 10 teams which are currently, or which were there before Cadillac came, which went through a very tough time in the COVID era, when financially it was very bad for the teams. And but they put all a lot of effort in, and now just giving access to someone and taking revenue away from them is not right. So obviously now there must be a plan in place that that Cadillac will add also to the financial results.
Exactly. I think a lot of people were pleased to see them. From a fan perspective, it gives more opportunities to see more drivers, more personalities come out, doesn't it? So it's nice to see Cadillac will gain that entry and see what they can do. Last question for you, Gunther. Out of all the races you've been involved with in your career, Formula One and beyond, what was your best race?
I would say my best race was Australia 2016, what we talked before, and again with reflecting afterwards, it's pretty cool, to set up an F1 team on a kitchen table, writing up a business plan, and then taking part of it and scoring points. It's not many people have got the opportunity to do this, and I'm very happy about that one.
Brilliant. Well, Günther Steiner, look, thank you so much for joining me. Best of luck for what's going to be another busy year for you and your tour. I can come see it, right? Can I get a ticket? Is that right?
Yeah, I get a free ticket.
Yeah,
you get the free tickets. Don't worry.
I legally can't accept that. So, Günther Steiner, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
5 Live's Checkered Flag Podcast.
Well, it was great to hear from former Haas team principal Günther Steiner. Andrew, how do you rate Haas's season so far? Because Günther said in that chat, and we all saw it, they had a terrible start in Australia. They were worried. They didn't know why they were so slow. But if you take that out of the equation, to me, it seems it's been a pretty good start to their year.
It really has. And it was quite extraordinary, Harry, wasn't it? Because after Australia, Io Komatsu, the team principal who took over from Günther Steiner at the beginning of last year, he held a news conference in China in which he explained that Haas had found this aerodynamic instability in their car and that it was going to take them a while to solve it. And then they had a really good weekend in China. And now they're currently, after 5 races, they're 6th in the championship with 20 points, only 5 points behind Williams. So that's been a really strong start to the season. And Ollie Behrman in particular has been outstanding, I think, in the last few races. Certainly giving Esteban Ocon, his teammate, something to think about. So I think they still have issues with their car. They're still running into these aerodynamic stability issues in certain types of corner, but they got on top of them really quickly. I think they basically they redesigned the floor without using the wind tunnel in an attempt to get over that bouncing problem that they were experiencing in high-speed corners, which is quite impressive in itself. So I think I would say, yes, it's been a strong start to the season to follow on from what was actually last year a pretty decent season from Haas. It's interesting, actually, that they're 6th in the championship, but in terms of the absolute pace rankings of the cars, they're only 9th fastest. That in itself says quite a bit about the strength of the way they've maximised their potential from the car. If they can only got the 9th fastest car, only ahead of Sauber, but lying that high in the championship.
I also think it says something about their driver lineup at the moment, because it does seem, I know it's early stages, but they seem to be getting on fairly well and fairly complementary of each other. You've got that experience with Esteban Ocon, but Behrman coming in as a rookie, obviously with those race outings last year, there was a lot of expectation on him, and there still is. But I think he's been performing relatively well. Do you think he is still within earshot of being a Ferrari driver in the future? Because, of course, that's who supported him throughout his junior career.
Well, that's a big ask for anybody. You've got to prove. I mean, Ferrari are, one of the iconic teams. Their ambition is to win the championship every year. They haven't done it for a while, obviously, but they have the very highest standards when it comes to drivers. You only have to look at their current lineup to see that. It's arguably, well, if Lewis Hamilton was performing better on paper, it's the best driver lineup on the grid, right? Even though Hamilton's not had a particularly good start to the season. Ollie Behrman started well. He's 3-all with Ocon in qualifying across the 6 qualifying sessions there have been, including the sprint in China. And he's just about a 10th on average quicker than Ocon. Now, and Ocon is not, an absolute A-grade driver, but he's pretty decent in qualifying. So that's a very good start to his first full season from Ollie Behrman. But it's just promising, and it's just a start. He's got a lot to prove before he establishes himself as a future Ferrari driver. And of course, the problem for him at the moment is that they've already got Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. So there's no chance of Ferrari getting rid of Leclerc. He's too good. The only way he's leaving Ferrari is if he chooses to leave, and he's under contract for quite a long time still. And Hamilton obviously is more of a question mark, but if and when Hamilton leaves Formula One or leaves Ferrari, then the likes of Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Russell, they're all going to be in contention for that seat because that's Ferrari. So let's wait and see. Let's give Ollie Behrman some time to prove how good he is, but it's been a good start for him.
It certainly has. Now, Günther also spoke about Cadillac, of course. I actually can't believe they're on the grid next year. It seems like we've talked about it for so long, and suddenly, oh no, they're arriving, it's happening. Do you think they can be competitive next season? Because Haas have actually set the benchmark in terms of a new team coming in and not being totally left behind by the rest of the field.
Well, Haas took a very singular approach. They used the rules at the time to buy everything they possibly could from Ferrari. So that car is basically a Ferrari mechanically. And that worked quite well for Haas at the very beginning, and it caused a lot of controversy at the time. But Cadillac aren't doing it that way. They're setting up a brand new team from scratch. They've got a base at Silverstone. At the moment, they're quite a small team. They're going to be using Ferrari engines next year, and they've got some experienced people there. But I think it's going to be a big ask for them to be competitive. And I think when you talk about competitive in the context of a new team, Harry, it'd be interesting for me to ask you, what exactly do you mean by competitive? Do you mean because competitive is, are they going to be racing McLaren at the front of the field?
Okay, yeah.
But are you saying decent midfield contenders, which I suspect is what you probably were meaning?
I would say decent midfield, because how I look at it is, Haas came in and were immediately midfield team and scrapping it with the ones that have been around and had the experience. What I compare it to as being non-competitive is when, you go back to 2010 and you had 3 teams all come in who were just way off the pace, barely able to get within 107% during qualifying.
So I don't know is the answer. I can test the water in Formula One, the general opinion in Formula One amongst other teams is they will be at the back, the absolute back when they start out. But
interesting.
Maybe they won't be.
Well, of course, because news actually coming in today as well, because they'll come on the grid with Ferrari engines initially, and then GM have now been officially approved by the FIA to be a power unit supplier from 2029 that is expected to start. So that's obviously a huge undertaking. But when you also compare it to the likes of, we will see a new team on the grid next year as well, let's face it, in the form of Audi, who are absorbing Sauber, and they are also going to be bringing in PU power there. But there seems to be general pessimism around that project as well.
Yeah, so just to deal with Cadillac, it wasn't a surprise to hear that the FIA had approved them as a power unit supplier, because that's sort of taken as read, because they've already been announced that they were going to be building their own engines. So it'd be kind of weird for the FIA to turn around and say, no, you can't. What was the news today was that they're committed to having that engine ready by 2029, as you said, Harry. And that's the first time that they've put a date on when that engine will be ready. Audi, I think the pessimism is largely because it's very clear how much work they have to do to turn Sauber into a competitive proposition. And when I say competitive, I really do mean racing at the front, because Audi aren't coming into Formula One to be decent midfield contenders. They're coming in to win. They don't mess up. This is the Volkswagen Group. It's the biggest car manufacturer in the world. They want to win, like they won at Le Mans many, many times with both Audi and the Bentley brand, of course, like they won in World Rallying. That's the level of their ambition. Of course, Cadillac want to win as well, but it's not quite the same thing. And you add that on to the whispers that are beginning to be heard on the grapevine about where the various manufacturers are with their engine projects for next year. And pretty much everyone in Formula One thinks that Mercedes have an advantage at the moment with the 26 engines.
Are we going to get deja vu?
I honestly don't know how they know this, right? Because everyone's engine is being worked on in private. But what happens is people submit their data to the FIA, and I guess people have coffees or beers together or whatever, and word trickles out. So that's the background for why Audi are considered to be not in the place they want to be, at least not from the start. So if you've got a team that already exists in Formula One, with the backing of a manufacturer of the capacity and resources of Audi, already admitting themselves that they're not going to be competitive, to then say, here's a startup team that's being based out of a quite small scale facility at Silverstone, not like a bespoke factory like Sauber already has, and asking them to build a car that can compete, never mind with McLaren and Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull, but also with, Williams and Alpine and Racing Bulls, these teams that have been doing it for years. That's a big ask. And I think one of the things that people sometimes don't consider about Formula One, even people like the VW Group who are coming in from other parts of motorsport, is that the competitive level is so high. It's so far above any other form of motorsport. It's almost hard to conceive of how difficult it is to be good in Formula One, and the excellence that's required on every single level. So to set up a team from scratch and expect to be coming in and being anything other than close to the back is going to be tough for anybody.
Everything is on such a knife edge, isn't it? And I think one thing's for certain is you need to grab a cappuccino with Toto Wolff in Miami, I think, to get the latest engine scoop by the sounds of it. Let's turn our attention to immediate matters. It is kind of the Miami Grand Prix coming up next week, and there are so many storylines. Those storylines are the ones that are just bubbling in the background for next year. In the here and now, what are we looking out for, Benny? We've got championship battle brewing between the two McLarens, a Verstappen that you can never rule out. What more?
Well, everyone headed into this season of Formula One thinking it had so much potential, right? And that's the same now, but we're seeing patterns start to develop. You know, the competitive battle between Red Bull and McLaren, as you say, Harry, is intriguing. You know, the McLaren is the fastest car, that's clear. But there are certain circuits where Red Bull can absolutely compete with it, and Verstappen is so good. You know, he's a monumental level of genius of driver, and we saw that with that qualifying lap in Suzuka, and again in Jeddah. Two absolutely outstanding performances to put him in the position that he was in those two races. I don't think that they're going to be that as competitive in Miami because it's hot and it's a circuit with quite a few slow speed corners, but maybe we'll be wrong. Let's see. It's hard to predict. Then you've got Ferrari. One, they've not started the season in as strong a competitive position as they wanted to. And the second story is Hamilton. You know, he won the sprint race in China and got that box ticked straight away. But the rest of his season has been pretty poor from his level, and he looks like a haunted figure at the moment. You know, after Jeddah, he was saying he doesn't know how long these struggles are going to continue, probably all year. And then you've got Mercedes, who are just very nearly there in that battle at the front. You know, George Russell, again, has been absolutely outstanding with some of his qualifying performances. He's always up there competing for the top three on the grid. They had a difficult race in Jeddah, but, you know, so the top four teams themselves is already a compelling narrative in so many different ways. Of course, that's not even talking about Norris against Piastri against Verstappen in terms of the title race, which looks like it's going to run all year. All these storylines, Harry, it's mouthwatering.
Oh, I can't wait. Well, thank you, Benny. I think that just about does it for this week and leaves us with enough to look forward to in Miami. A reminder that you can now hear the Chequered Flag podcast every week. Next week, the Miami Grand Prix, you can hear our usual Chequered Flag podcast content from Friday the 2nd of May. Stick it in the diary. Plus, we'll have live coverage of every session, including the race, across the 5 Live network. Remember, it's a sprint weekend in Miami, so just the one practice session. And then, for the first time this year, we're actually going to be joined by the 1996 Formula One world champion, Damon Hill, for the weekend's action. It's not to be missed. All information on all the session times and exactly when and where you can hear us will be on the BBC Sport website. We shall see you in Miami. This has been an IMG production for BBC Sounds.